I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Appreciate it very much. We've kind of got it dolled up to kind of look like a circus because we all know that everything going on in Washington, D.C. appears to be a circus. And we say not our circus, not our monkeys, but you know what? It is our circus and they are our monkeys because we elected them, and so it's our responsibility to hold them accountable. We're very fortunate that we have a congressman that is open to coming and sharing his thoughts and what's going on with us. And we just would like to make this a nice evening. We've got some great questions. I'm going to tell you, you guys have submitted some awesome questions. If you're still interested, there's still time to submit some other questions. But we're looking forward to a really fun and informative evening. You can sit down, Kevin. Well, don't sit because we got to pray and then we've got to say the pledge. We have asked Bob Jack, who is the Tulsa County Republican Chairman, to lead us in an opening prayer and pledge. This also happens to be his church, as well as Janine Wooster. Janine, where are you? Thank you so much for helping us in getting this location. We appreciate it very much. So if everyone would please stand. Bob?
And welcome to Fellowship Bible Church, by the way. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. This is what the country needs a lot of right now, guys. I just implore all of you to be on your knees almost every day, asking the good Lord for direction and guidance for this country, and that we would especially pray for our legislators. It's really important at this point in time, so join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time we can come together as citizens of a great country, a country that was founded under your guidance, Lord. This is your country, and we give this to you. We give this meeting to you tonight, Lord, that you would guide us and that we would learn from this meeting. We would be educated from this meeting. As we go out from here, we would spread the word of good conservative policies and procedures within the country, Lord. Lord, I just ask for your guidance, and I especially ask for your hand on Kevin tonight as he speaks, and Lord, just raise him up and keep him fighting the battle. We ask this in thy name, amen. There's pledge, salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bob.
The groups that are putting on this event is Tulsa Area Republican Assembly, the Tulsa 912 Project, and the Tulsa County Republican Men's Club. And you're not here to listen to me, I do not believe. You're here to listen to Kevin Hern. Welcome with me, Kevin Hern, our Congressman.
You know, it's really good to be here. I really appreciate you all doing this. This is obviously a great place to come if you want to get regrounded in what's going on, in America, what should be going on. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for Rhonda and for Michael and for David. And I'm probably missing, I saw where Brenda put this out on the Republican Women's site. Donnie, thank you. Brenda just tells him what to do and he does it. Right, Brenda? No, oh yeah, I see you smiling. I know how that works. You're sitting next to my wife. But I really want to tell you, I really appreciate my wife, Tammy, for being here. This is a team effort, so thank you so much, honey, for being here. And I mentioned team. I'll tell you this, and you all know this from your engagement in Congressman Bridenstine's organization as he was coming through. You're only as good as the team you have around you. We have a tremendous district team, and Robert Airy running our district. He's back there. Thank you, Robert. We have Adam Jones back there, and Ashley is here, and Cam is here, and Ashley's here, and who else is here? Charles is here. Where you at, Charles? I thought I saw, there you are. Charles is back there. just a great team in the district. We have these folks have got experience. Ashley's been doing the veterans work forever and ever and ever, does a fantastic job. It's so integral to what we do in our district. Tons of casework. If you haven't engaged with them, if you need anything done, you need to get our attention, please do so. As you all know, it's been a very busy first 9 months of my time in office. We come home every weekend to make sure we're doing everything we can to meet as many people as quickly as we can. But they've done a great job of having 30 or 40 different meetings a week that they've attended, doing yesterday alone in Wagner County, going out and doing sort of our mobile office. Did that in Bartlesville back about 2 months ago. And so a lot of stuff going on to try to get information from you, so which makes this very, very important. You know, I feel sort of awkward talking to a group like you because you all stay so engaged to what's going on in America. That's why you're here. That's why you're so frustrated. That's why you're frustrated like I am. And again, it's always good to be in a part, if you weren't frustrated, you wouldn't care. And we need a lot more people caring in this country, because right now it is a zoo, or one might say a circus in Washington, D.C. You know, I often get asked a lot of questions about, really about 3 questions people ask me that have known me for a long time, and some of you that walked alongside us in the campaign asked me a question. It's like, well, is this as crazy as you thought it would be? Yes, it is. That is not fake news. It is crazy up there. It's totally amazing. And then I get asked the question, what's the biggest surprise that you've seen or heard? I said, well, I thought it would be crazy, and it was, but the biggest surprise I've had is how many people say they want to help Americans get into jobs, but when you get there, they try to work on policies or push policies forward, being our Democrat colleagues, that completely destroys jobs. They're so envious of this economy, they never even talk about it. It's like it doesn't exist. Which is the most, I challenge you, go talk, listen to CNN, listen to MSNBC, listen to CNBC, listen to other talk shows. They don't even talk about the economy. They've got no answer for it. Even President Clinton knew that it was about the economy, stupid. It's about putting money back in your pockets. And this president has done that. They've kept him so engaged in other things that it's so difficult to talk about the economy. It's the greatest economy we've had in the history of our time, certainly everybody in this room. And then finally, I get this question. People ask me, say, would you do it again? And the answer is absolutely yes. You need people right now in Washington, D.C. First of all, I would tell you need business people. There are people who proclaim to be business people. I know some of them. But I don't know what business they were in. They might have been I really don't. Seriously. We've got, and I'm not saying anything about them personally. I'm just talking about their experiences. On the Small Business Committee, which I'm on, I think I may be the only one that truly has any small business. Some proclaim this, and I always go try to search their background, and they may be the 9th partner in a business, and they have a full-time job being something else. I'm saying that's not really, you're getting a paycheck somewhere else. A true small business person is the last to get paid. That's what gets you engaged in politics. That's what gets you engaged in what's going on in government, because what happens in government affects you. You take care of your people, you take care of your vendors, but you're the last to get paid. And when you're the last to get paid, you get involved, you get engaged. And my wife and I have been small business people. The last time I got a paycheck, other than this new thing called Congress, the last time I got a check that had not my name on the front was over 22 years ago. So 22 years signing both sides of the paycheck makes a big difference in how you view Washington, D.C. And so, I am working hard to represent your voice. I work for you first. I want to fulfill my campaign promises, and I think we've been doing a great job of that. Some people ask me, did you support the president on this? You know what? I support you all first. You elected me. I represent the 1st District of Oklahoma, and I support the president and his policy second if it's the right direction for the country. But we're co-equal bodies of the government, and we need to work together on things. And so every chance we have, we work together, but it's about supporting you all first. And you know what? 99.9% of the time, we're all going to be in lockstep together. That's the beautiful thing, and that's why this economy is working. But I will tell you this. We all need to send people. You have friends across the country. You need to work harder on getting your friends to elect people who have had some experiences in life. I'm going to tell you this little story. It won't last 30 seconds. But many of you know that Tom Corburn's a great friend of mine. And he told me one time, a really good friend of his, he'd grown up with Muskogee, came to him and said, hey, Tom, said, my son has just graduated college. He wants to get into college. He wants to get into politics. What should he do? What's the pathway? You did it. You never ran for anything else. What's the pathway? He said, tell him to go work somewhere for 30 years, create something, do something, be somebody, and then run for office. That's what we need. We need people that this is not their primary job. This is not the paycheck they need, that they're going to go up there and represent you and be immune to the influences of there. So, serve on 3 committees: budget, small business, and natural resources. I serve on budget because I wanted to, because I'm a big fiscal guy. I want to know where the money's going. I think as a small business person, as I just mentioned, you have to be able to control the money, control the cost, know where things are going. I wanted to know if it was sort of fake news that we're having all these problems, or is it true? It's true. Thursday, when I voted no on the bipartisan budget, that was 100 days to the date that we had submitted a budget out of the budget committee in regular order that Nancy Pelosi had turned down. 100 days. Doing our job out of the budget committee. I have every number that you can possibly want on the budget from 1980 forecast to 2029. I asked for all these different numbers. The budget committee worked tirelessly over the weekend to send them to me because I wanted to know fact from fiction. Natural resources is huge for our state because it's about our energy and our minerals in our state. It's about this thing called the Green New Deal that you may have heard of. It's in every committee. It's amazing how they've made this idea of ending fossil fuels in 10 years, completely eliminating them, everything, any kind of methane emission. I'll leave your imagination what that might be. So to eliminate that, get it off the face of the earth. But they're doing absolutely nothing underneath to help the rest of the world do that, and we have a lot of control of being able to do that, exporting some of our energy overseas like our natural gas. Also, it's very big on our tribal situations. Honestly, I've been there now in that committee for 7 months. We've not talked about one tribal issue in Oklahoma that I can think of, not one. We've talked about stuff, and this, no kidding, this is how the Green New Deal infiltrates and consumes all of our time. That we're talking about tribal issues where, quote, sovereign land is washing into the Pacific Ocean because the climate change, global warming, has raised the Pacific Ocean 1/4 of an inch, and therefore has taken all this dirt and washed it into the Pacific Ocean. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't know how you prove that, but that's what we spend a lot of time, those kind of conversations. Everything around the Green New Deal is all-consuming in pretty much every committee. And then finally, on small business, and one of the things that I've got there is I'm chairing the subcommittee for the Republicans, so the ranking member, on growth, tax, and capital access to capital, so small businessmen and women can grow their business, existing businessmen and women can grow their business to other levels. And then we talk about hearings about the tax policy and growth and stuff like that. And I find it very interesting is that when you talk to these witnesses and the way this is set up, I was just telling Rod back there, is that as many of you may know, when you're in the majority, you control every agenda item on every committee, everything that you do. So it's a lot of stuff going on right now. And when they control their witnesses, they try to tune them up to make it sound like it's Republicans are destroying jobs. And I'll promise you, they get 5 minutes each. Within 1 minute, if you walk into that room, you would think they're Republican witnesses. Because they can't find it, their staff on the committee will tell them what to say. Then after 1 minute, it's like they go into their business world, and their business talk is Republican. And I always get them. Every time I speak to them, I say to them, I said, every one of you must be Republicans at heart, because you sound like Republicans. And that's the thing with business people. It's very, very difficult in this day and age to be a Democrat and get your mind around all the things that the government's trying to do to take you out of business. So, with that, again, I could talk to you all night. I just want to make sure there was anything I was going to make sure I touch base with you on. Again, as I said, it's an honor to be here. We get criticized a lot by the news media about, well, it's like the issue that's going on with Nancy Pelosi right now. Well, it's her time that Paul Ryan went through. She's dealing with her split in her party with the Socialist Democrats. And Paul Ryan had to deal with the Republicans and the Freedom Caucus with the Republicans. And I'll tell you, that is not true. That is not true. The Freedom Caucus was about getting us closer to our founding, our Constitution. The Socialist Democrats want to get us closer to what's going on in Russia, in Iran, in Venezuela. We see Venezuela as the greatest example in the world of where these four, AOC plus 3, as the president likes to call them, are wanting to take us. And so we have got to be steadfast and remember, and if you can't find it in there, we got to start bending this country back to the constitutional principles and the founding of it. It's not hard reading. I tell all my friends, I said, listen, if you're trying to figure out what went on, just go read some Federalist Papers. Just reading. Spend less time, going to parties and read a little bit. So I will tell you this, I started my first thing that I did in January of creating a letter. Many of you know my story. Had a stepdad didn't like to work, and it's about living on food stamps, and that's not a way to do it if you got somebody who can work and doesn't want to work. And so it was really frustrating to me to see what was going on. So I created a letter. I actually got advice from a person on the Freedom Caucus, Gary Palmer, great friend from Alabama, who now chairs the policy team for the Republican Party. He said, you should write a letter to Secretary Perdue to ask him to execute the rule that just became available in the Farm Bill. And so I did, and as a new freshman, I had 62 members sign on with me, 62 members. And we sent this to Secretary Perdue. We actually saw him, Tammy and I saw him at the congressional baseball game. He was getting ready to execute this rule that would remove the wait list. So just so you know, as a sidebar, the 1996 Welfare to Work law is still in place. States have waved around it. Secretary Perdue just implemented this. In fact, if you read the op-ed in the Tulsa World just 2 days ago, I believe it was, there was a lady in there criticizing that Perdue was trying to take away SNAP assistance to all these people. That was the letter that I wrote that was in the comment period, along with my colleagues, to get after these states that are trying to abuse the program. So, that was the first thing we did. And then sort of last week, as we're pushing forward, trying to find an opening as a freshman, as in the minority, to find a window opening has been pretty interesting to do. As many of you know, I've talked about it on Pat Campbell, I've talked about it in the paper. I spent a lot of time on this immigration issue. Tammy and I started doing E-Verify in our McDonald's restaurant 7 years ago because we saw this coming. It is problematic. So Senator Inhofe introduced the Asylum Abuse Reduction Act. On the Senate side, we did it on the House side. So that was it's actually our second bill to introduce last week. But to get after this nonsense of claiming asylum after you swam, after you've gone through the deserts of Mexico, swam across the river, gone through thickets, got in a truck, gone 200 miles inland, you get stopped. Oh, I'm coming for asylum. Are you kidding me? You have a border. We have ports of entries. There are 1,000 people standing in line doing it the right way. That's what you should do. That's what you should do. So we'll be pushing hard on that. It's getting a lot of traction right now. Senator Inhofe on the Senate side has already picked up, I think, Marsha Blackburn and 2 other U.S. senators on that side. So we'll push on our side to continue to make it happen. The first bill we actually introduced, many of you all certainly had friends that experienced the flooding in our district and all up and down the Arkansas River, all the way through Mark Wayne's district. And the one thing we heard was so frustrating. We did a town hall or a get-together with all the people that were affected like 2 nights later. So we had everybody. And the Corps of Engineers took a beating. And so we wanted to look into that to see if they were actually derelict in their duty or were they following policy. I will tell you, they were following policy. So if they were following policy, the thing to do in Congress is to change that policy because that's where it was. So we introduced a bill, I think it was Wednesday, that they have this thing called, some of you may have heard it, they can't commit to communicating they're going to open and release water unless the water is actually on the ground. It's called water on the ground. That's kind of the short term of it. So when the rain is falling and they can't do anything with predictions, when the rain is in the watershed, it's hitting their checkpoints, they know how much their reservoir is going to rise, how much they got to release. So then, only then can they start talking about what they're going to release. So we introduced a bill last Wednesday that removes that restriction. They can actually start communicating when the water is forecast to hit the watershed, which would give everybody downstream a lot more opportunity to start doing stuff. It also gives them a lot more opportunity to start opening floodgates and releasing water earlier lowering the pool so there's not as much flooding. And if you're in that area, if you're in Town and Country over in Sand Springs area, you need that. You want that. 400 homes over there damaged, so. Okay. Talked enough, it's time to listen. And so, Rhonda, you running this?
We wanted to ask you, do you want us to keep it all on the same subject as we ask the questions, or do you want us, or can we just kind of
Surprise me.
Surprise you. There's some really good ones in here. I'm going to, oh, that's right. If you have cards with questions, please hold them up and someone will come around and pick them up real quick. No, David's picking them
I
up.
will tell you that some of the answers, I'm just thinking that some answers might actually be, some questions might be answered by one answer.
That's right. And well, and
they might bleed
we get
across.
that. We're going to try and not,
Okay.
and I wanted to give you a heads up towards the end. We're just going to kind of do a rapid fire question just so that stuff that doesn't require a
Okay.
whole lot of thought, I would hope. So I'm going to ask a question real quick. I'm going to start with immigration. And this one comes from Peggy. Peggy's not happy with you.
Uh-oh. HR 1044.
That's exactly what HR 10
Yeah.
is. It's about. And so she says, you recently voted for HR 1044, Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act, touting the U.S. Chamber of Commerce excuse that there are not enough high-skilled tech workers to meet the needs of U.S. business.
Yeah.
85,000 American workers will be displaced this year by H-1B visa foreign workers from India and China. If there is such a shortage of U.S. workers, why have they laid off 20,000 U.S. workers in the last 5 years and replaced them with H-1B visa workers? And then she went on and talked about the number of people that have been affected in
Yeah.
businesses. So, so how would the H-1B visa?
Yeah, so it didn't change the quota, so let's get that. So all it did was allow, right now we're restricted to what you could get from what country. So you could get it from, you might need engineers, for example. Most of you know I'm an engineer. Takes you 24 years, basically. Somebody from birth has got to decide they want to be an engineer before they are an engineer. So you got a 24-year lag time in building up the STEM network in America: science, technology, engineering, math. We have not done a good job in this country competing globally. We see that where the Department of Education on the federal level has done a terrible job. So we can talk about that all day long. We've educated some foreign workers. They work a period of time, and based on the flat percentage of quota, we have to send certain people back. So let's say, and I won't get the numbers right, but I don't get bogged down in this either. Where's my 2 or 3 minute one right there? Yeah. So if I've got a timer up here. It's a mechanical timer, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. If we were to say 7% was our number, which I think it was the number, 7% was the number, I believe it was, that 7% applied to everybody. So Bangladesh may not produce any engineers, and you may have 7% from Asia Pacific where they love math and science and all that stuff. Folks, we're just not producing enough in America. It's not all high tech. I mean, it's not all a particular specialty that we're dealing with here. It's like across the board. It's like electrical engineers, software programming, cybersecurity people. The 3 million job openings in the next 10 years in cyber that we don't have anybody in the pipeline for. So everybody's scrambling to get them in there. This was to fill a gap for a short period of time here to get where we can take care of these high-tech jobs we have, because here's what's going to happen if we don't. They're going to take their skills that they learned, their education and their work, they're going to go back to Asia or India, and they're going to compete with us. And if you do that enough times, Microsoft and all those folks will just start moving their places where the jobs are, where they have the workers to do it, because they're not going to stop doing things. So this was a temporary fix to a real big problem we have. We need to encourage kids, grandkids to get into this, because I wish we didn't have to bring anybody here. Anybody. But when you talk to the Microsofts of the world and the Amazons of the world that are coming here, they need engineers, they need scientists, they need people that can actually do this work, and we're just not producing enough domestic STEM people to make it happen. We see all these programs. That's why they're coming up, is because we're trying to engage the younger generation to get them going. But we've got a 20-year lag once we start it.
Okay, I'm going to do a follow-up on this real quick, because it states here that the HR 1044 Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act provides unlimited green cards for any foreign national and his family for a $500,000 investment in the United States.
That's the EB-5 visa. That's been around a long time. So that one is, there are actually companies right here that do this. So that's probably been around, I know, for 10 years. Basically what China can do. There's actually a battery company here that does this. They can come in and invest. They do it a lot in New York and a lot in Los Angeles and San Francisco where they have larger communities of China. But the Chinese people really want to do that. They'll come in and they have to spend 500, is it 500,000? 500,000, create 50 jobs, I believe is the number on that. I actually looked into this 5 or 6 years ago investing with them. Because you can do this. They start companies and they'll bring in domestic investors. But it's the way they bring people in. It was the way to contract, quite frankly, is the way they could bring in foreign direct investment, the federal government, when we were had such a high tax bracket that nobody wanted to invest here. Right. It was the incentive for the Chinese people that had money, that were Western lovers, not Chinese lovers, but Western lovers, wanted to bring their kids here to get educated, wanted to bring their businesses here, they wanted to be Westernized, and that was a way for them to get in here. I think right now what you're going to see happening with the whole idea of the Chinese relationship, that's going to change very dramatically. I see some legislation changing that probably in the next 12 months, and we'll be a part of that for sure.
Here's one that I can read. Sometimes the printing is hard to read on some of these cards, but I can read this. And I like the question. Please compare and contrast your life in a Republican-controlled House and a Democrat-controlled House.
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I was just talking to a couple of friends this past week. You know, I had the team when I was flying home on Thursday. I said, can you print me off everything that we voted on 598. We had 598 votes since I was sworn in on November 13th. And we missed 7. That was the day that we flew down here with the head of Homeland Security and flew back with the vice president. That we missed 7 votes that day. So we've not missed any votes other than that. But I will tell you where the difference is, as I understand it, is that when the Republicans were in control, there was a very concise, there was a strategy in the votes. The votes that came to the floor from all the committees sort of filtered in to get a common, you know, limited government. Now this is what I'm told, limited government. What I'm seeing right now is you could be voting, I was telling somebody this, I said in a 1-hour period, we could be talking about Chinese hacking, abortion issues, southern border, and you know, how we're going to fund multiple sclerosis, all in 1 hour. And it's just that way on the floor. I mean, so when you set up the House, you set up House rules. And these are the rules that everybody will abide by. How many people are going to be on a committee, how, you heard the big controversy they're going to remove "In God We Trust," you know, the Pledge of Allegiance and all this, they're going to take all this out. The one thing they put in is that every bill, we're going to receive it 72 hours in advance so we can read it. 72 hours. Many of you know that Tom Cole chairs, is the ranking member on rules. So whenever these things are coming to the floor, the rules guys debate forever. So McGovern on one side, who's the chairman, and Tom Cole on the other. Literally, we had 7 amendments on a bill that we got 37 minutes before 37 minutes. There's no way you can read them. You vote no on all of those. It's impossible. So they're violating rules right and left. Pelosi will have a thought, and then Cortez will show up in her office, and that changes. They'll make up some crazy suspension vote just to justify us being there. We've sat there, I know at least 4 or 5 days, we've sat there all day long. They said votes will be somewhere around 5 o'clock and voted on 2 suspension bills, which means naming a post office. All day long, waiting on votes to occur that were going to be something really meaningful to the American people, to you, and we vote on naming a post office. I mean, it's just so inefficient right now what's going on. Terrible. She was going to do this 100 hours thing she's going to get done. One of them was the $15 hour minimum wage we voted on about 5 or 6 days ago. We got into that, you know, in month 7. Month 7. So it's just totally inefficient right now. She's lost complete control of the agenda on her side. It's driven by whatever the news media says. It's driven by her squad, as she calls them. You all may have seen last week that she said, oh, we've made up. We've kissed and made up. We're also, and I want to know, what are you made up on? Are you going to give health care for all, you know, Medicare for all? You're going to give health care for every illegal immigrant in America? I mean, you hate Israel? You're not going to fund Israel anymore? I mean, what is it you all have agreed on? Because that's what Cortez stands for. And Pelosi's up there, kumbaya. Oh, we just have a little bit of differences, but it's like a family. It's like a family. It's an interesting family. Sorry.
Inbred, maybe.
Gosh, it's so frustrating. If you can hear the frustration in my voice, it's very frustrating.
Kevin, military has always been really important to our family. I've got a question here about veterans. How likely is it that the House and Senate will pass legislation this year to grant the Congressional Gold Medal for WW2 U.S. Merchant Mariners? There are less than 2,500 of these veterans still living. Merchant Marine veterans were denied the GI Bill and other benefits after World War II and were only granted limited veteran benefits in 1988. Is there any traction for passing H.R. 154, honoring our WW2 Merchant Mariners Act of 2019? This bill would provide $25,000 to each surviving World War II USMM.
Yeah, you know, I would love to tell you that we should have already passed that. We should. Where's Lori at? Is she here? No, there you go. Her dad obviously is, you know, this is huge for him. But again, these are the things that if you saw the Republicans control, I have a high level of confidence these would be things we'd be voting on. I mean, you know, we did get the Blue Water Navy Act passed for the Agent Orange issue, which it's unbelievable. They've been working on this for years. I don't know why it was such a big deal, but this should have been something that was easy to do. So again, it's like talking about American workers. They talk about how they love their vets, but don't want to bring anything to the floor to take care of the veterans. And so we've signed on, I think it's 14 different, I'd have to look in there, I've got it, but 14 different bills that support our veterans. And so we'll be there. It'll be a yes vote as soon as we can get it to the floor, but everybody's pushing hard.
Okay, this one's on health care. Everyone agrees that healthcare costs have skyrocketed and in many cases are unaffordable. President Trump and others have passed around the idea of an international pricing index to replace the current market-based system and set the stage for government-dictated, artificially low prices. History shows us the only thing price controls succeed in is causing shortages, which leads to rationing. Where do you stand on the international pricing index?
Well, basically the short version is where I stand on price controls. I'm not for it. I think the free market ought to apply. You know, I've had, there are so many components. I don't know how many people are in the healthcare business in here, and I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. Holy cow. I mean, it's no wonder it's so expensive and it's so complicated. There's everybody got their hand in it. You know, from the pharma to the PBMs in the middle of all this, to the independent pharmacies, to the big pharmacies that are own PBMs, so they're kind of self-dealing. We've heard a little bit of, you know, just the surface of PBM issue, the pharmacy benefit manager, I think that's what it is that right? Pharmacy benefit manager, where they actually go and, quote, dictate a price, and I'll give you just an example of this. I had the pharma folks in my room, in my office. And when they sit down, they start introducing themselves. And my response to them was, I wanted to get the evil people in my office, and I finally have them. And they were stunned. They're like, oh crap, you know, that wasn't exactly how I was wanting this to go. But I said, there is good news. And they're like, oh, good. Well, they said, what is it? And I said, the PBM people are sitting right outside. And they're coming in next. The actual response is the PBM people don't want to come see me because I've been beating on them pretty hard. But, you know, they gave me an example. So they said, you know, everybody beats up on the PBM because they're not in the room. But let's take insulin. They said, you may have two companies. Insulin's been around for years. I mean, 50 years, 40 years. We had a big article in the paper the other day about it. So two are producing at $1,000 a month dosage. And a person wants to come in and produce it at $500 to take market share and to do all the right things. The cost should be almost nothing because it's been around, all the patents have gone and all that kind of stuff. But because the PBM makes their profit on the percentage that the drug sells for, why would you ever sell something at a less price if your percentage is going to be lower? You'd want to sell it at the higher price. So the person that's making it at $500 or selling it for $500 can't sell it, so they have to raise their price so the PBM will buy it. It's crazy. It is absolutely broken. As a matter of fact, I was so frustrated with this conversation. I had a group of folks. I had my deputy chief with me, who's a brilliant policy guy, and his name's Jeff Billman. Everybody calls him Billman. And we're sitting there. We had a 30-minute meeting. I sat there for 10 minutes, and I looked at them all at the table. About 7 of them sitting there. I said, I'm going to tell you one thing. You all at this table are all making money, all your different categories. You wouldn't be sitting here if you weren't. I'm going to tell you from my perspective in business, you all need to figure out the solution because it's going to be a lot less painful than if I figure it out. And with that, I'm leaving with Billman. And I just walked off and left them. Because it's frustrating. These guys are making billions and billions of dollars. And so the president's frustrated. You know, you get Drug Transparency Act and you get the judge that says you can't do it. Why is that? I mean, everything else, car dealers have to put their price online. Telephones have to put their price online. Why can't we have the drug people? They said, well, people won't buy it anymore because it's too expensive. Then lower the doggone price. Lower the doggone price. So I'm not supportive of the price controls. That's the answer.
Let me read two questions that are closely related. Is there any serious effort or plan to do anything to balance the budget?
No.
And the second.
I saw that last week. No.
You saw that coming, okay. How about if I read the second question then, written by a different person? What are one or more solutions to the ever-increasing debt, especially related to Social Security and Medicare?
Oh, man, we're going to take up the rest of our time tonight. This is one that's really, really been incredibly interesting to watch. The numbers, we all get just crazy on the numbers we hear. I've got the actual numbers from the CBO director. So the CBO is a nonpartisan group that's, has really brainiac economists. And so this past week I had the new director in my office asking these questions about the $15 minimum wage 2 weeks ago. And he's a really smart guy, brilliant guy actually. And you start asking questions and he was very forthright in his answers about, because I kind of got it over to balancing the budget. And they got about 200 ideas on the CBO website of things we could do. But I can tell you this, folks, right now, next year we're going to be, now I'm going to tell you these answers without the $320 billion that we just added over the baseline. When I say we, collectively the House did, that the Senate's probably going to vote on this week. Schumer has it his way, they're going to vote on it tonight. And it will pass, I'm convinced of that, and the President will sign it. Very frustrating for a lot of us. There's also a lot of misquotes. This is how, let me just back up. I'm going to give you a bunch of different answers here, but the polling in the United States doesn't even have the national debt show up on it anymore. It seems like we're the only ones that care. I mean, even Fox News, I was just listening on my radio yesterday, or day before yesterday, and the lady that they were talking to, was one of their commentators, said, 65 Republicans didn't support it. So the Republican Party doesn't care about it either. She's wrong. It's only 65 supported it. 129 didn't support it. That was a wrong answer. Then she said, well, we got $21 trillion in debt. No, we almost have $23 trillion in debt. So the point being with this is, the numbers are, nobody even talks about them anymore. So it's very frustrating when you're going to hear me say very frustrating because, again, we're voting on stuff like, should you have transgender bathrooms in your buildings? That's what we're voting on, stuff like that. Should we vote, churches have to recognize that somebody can't figure out in the morning whether they're a man or a woman. That's the kind of crap, sorry, somebody's probably recording this somewhere. That's the kind of crap we're voting on right now. I said it again. But we're not supporting, I know, this is one of those areas where I think the president's going to have to be really strong in this deal going forward. I mean, we're adding $320 billion to the baseline to the sequestration numbers. Next year, our deficit's going to be about $1.1 trillion, and I had them project out to 2029 because that's a 10-year deficit window, budget window. In 2029, we're going to have about $6.5 trillion in expenditures. We're going to be right at $4.5 trillion. We're going to be close, real close to $2 trillion a year in deficits. $2 trillion, huge number, absolutely huge number. The irony of all this is 80% of what we're going to be talking about will be on autopilot. 80% will be on the Social Security and Medicare interest on the debt. The interest on the debt in 4 years will surpass what we're spending on the military. And you have the left that says, well, just quit spending money on military and we'll fix all this problem. That's only $750 billion, and that'll last for just long enough for Russia and China to take over our country, and then we won't have to worry about anything. So it's one of those things where we don't have anybody, I mean, there was 129 of us voted against this deal, even though we love the military, even though we love pro-life, the Hyde Amendment, because that was also in there, even though we love the fact that the president had the ability to build more wall, we still believe that if we don't fix this debt and deficit problem, your kids and grandkids are not going to like what they see in the future. So I will leave you this. I challenge July 17th, 2017, go look up on YouTube and Google General Mattis and his questioning. He was at a hearing on defense. I think he was responding to Ben Nelson. He does a 52-second oration on the real issue in America, the problem with our sovereignty in the future. He talks about, using Eisenhower's quote when he was talking about Russia, Mattis talks about pity the day when the greatest threat we have to the Americans in this country is our debt and deficit. There will be a day in the near future that where our interest is more than we spend on national defense, and the big majority of that interest will go overseas to the people who are loaning us the money to build the military to defend us from the people we're loaning the money, getting money from. You can't make this stuff up. It's like a big Ponzi scheme. We got to get after this. Sorry.
This may be another one of the one-word answers for you. Is there anything about immigration that the Republicans can suggest in the House that the Democrats will approve?
You know, I think that it's a great question. I think if you just think 7 months, and I know it's a long time to think in this craziness right now, but 7 months ago, remind you, 7 months ago in January, there was not a national security crisis, there was not a humanitarian crisis. Neither one existed. The president was manufacturing those. So then, okay, well, maybe there is a national security crisis. We got to get after it because we got to see what's coming in. And then, oh, by the way, there is a humanitarian crisis, so that evolved, but President Trump was creating it. And then, on May 1st, the president asked for $4.6 billion to take care of the border, make sure they were funded, make sure we had all these people coming in. He said, we need them. These people are coming. We see them coming across the desert. They're going to be here. We got to do something with them. Nothing happened. 57 days later, we voted on it. We got $4.6 billion. I forgot there were 95 Democrats that voted no, I believe was the number, 94, 95 that voted no. And then you recall the infamous trip that 12 or 13 of them went down the border the next day and complained that that money we just voted in the day before, that they voted against, by the way, had not already started funding the very next day. And so what you're seeing and then in this budget deal, you saw Pelosi, remember, she said she would never give the president $1 for a wall, $1. And she just signed off on, I think it's $2.5 billion in this deal for the president on this bipartisan balanced budget agreement, or not balanced budget, bipartisan budget agreement. I'm only wishing that. Yeah. So I think that you're going to see, I heard Kevin McAleenan, who is the head of Homeland Security, say we're by the end of the year, or by the end of 2020, we'll have about 450 miles of wall that's real wall. It's not stuff that you can walk across. So that's happening. So the president is smiling. I just want to give you a thought before you ask this question. We all love Ronald Reagan. I quote him all the time. He was the president when I came out of high school. I created my first business under Ronald Reagan in 1985. He was a guy who says, you know, it's morning in America again. I know we all love Ronald Reagan. This president's done 10 times what Ronald Reagan has done in 2 years. In 2 years. And he's had every media outlet, with the exception of Fox News. Sometimes they're against him. Everybody's against him. Everybody says he's a racist. They don't know how to deal with him, but he is getting things done every single day. He's protecting their sovereignty in this country. People are working. The rallies are still huge. I mean, this guy is amazing, and he's done it in 2 years. Complete redoing of the tax code his first 2 years in office. Actually, his first year in office. It took Reagan 6 years to get that done. 6 years. And by the way, he's not done it with amnesty. He won't do it with amnesty. Ronald Reagan got hoodwinked. He was told that if you have 3.6 million folks, you give them amnesty, we'll build the wall for you, sir. That's what they told Ronald Reagan. We'll build the wall for you. We'll secure the border. Never happened. Never happened. President Trump will not fall for that again. It's going to be worked together. You saw the big wins from the Supreme Court. You saw that? And so, you know, we've got to make sure we get this fellow elected again, this guy named Donald J. Trump, because he'll get another Supreme Court justice. I'm certain of that. And, you know, that's huge. That's huge for turning this country back to some constitutional principles, to really uphold those three words we saw in the Declaration of Independence of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and do what we're supposed to do in this country, which is to protect us from bad people and protect the sovereign of this great nation. So I just want to interject that. I mean, I love Reagan, but Donald Trump has done a lot more.
He has done. And we may not like his tweets, but he's picking them off one at a time. I mean, look at Elijah Cummings, and then the woman goes and does the newscast, and a rat runs through the...
I tell you what,
I mean,
every Democrat's got to hate YouTube videos and everything, because everything I was telling Tammy yesterday, I said, everything the president has tweeted out, he is 3 steps ahead of him.
Yes.
It's like a few days later, these videos start coming out with the mayor of Baltimore. You hear, you know, Bernie Sanders 4 years ago in 2015 saying stuff about Baltimore being a third world country. And they got nothing. The newspaper had nothing to say. He talks about building the wall and how bad illegal immigrations are. You got Hillary, you got Obama, you got Bill, all saying that 13, 14 years ago. They have got to hate technology.
Exactly. Okay, this question has to do with Medicaid. States like ours, who are frugal with our Medicaid spending, only get 60% federal help. But states who expand Medicaid to those not in need get 90% federal help.
Yeah.
Why is that, and what can you do to fix it?
Well, so we actually get 68%. I'll tell you, if you haven't seen the article, Jonathan Small did a great job. It's very lengthy, but it does a fantastic job at OCPA talking about Medicaid expansion. Here's what I predict. I don't like to do a lot of predicting in politics. I predict that if it goes to the ballot, it will pass. I just think it'll pass. I mean, people think that government has more to give, the general population, and I think that's what will happen. We're one of 14 states that does not have Medicaid expansion that came back under the Obamacare. And what's crazy about it, if you look at the window, and I used to hear Frank Keating say this, whether you like it or not, he said, what's happened with the Oklahoma economy is not that we lost a lot of jobs, it's that so many more people went on Medicaid. I mean, we have 25%, there's over 1 million people that are on Medicaid, you know, 25% of our population in the state are on some form of Medicaid. And if you expand that, it's going to be even bigger. I mean, we look at the sheer dollars, it's in the billions of dollars that are coming in here. I don't know what's going to happen at the state level, but I predict if it goes to the ballot, it will pass. You know, the president proposed block granting, the money's back. My deal with that is that nothing good's when it comes out of sending money to Washington, D.C. first. You know, it just doesn't. I mean, there's too many big buildings up there with nice shiny objects in front of them that have to get paid. And, you know, I've thought, you know, it's much better to have the money stay at the state capitol, because folks like yourself can take a half a day, drive to the state capitol, petition your government, you know, share your grievances. You know, whether we liked what happened with teachers, they were sharing their grievances. You couldn't do that in Washington, D.C. That's why I don't think the Department of Education ought to be in D.C. I think it ought to be in the 50 states. I mean, if you've got an issue with education, go to your state capitol. Those people are here. We elect those people, we go hold them accountable. So, the Medicaid issue, Rhonda, is a fantastic, it's just another, just a craziness of what's going on in healthcare programs. And we've got to figure out how we're going to stop that. The president is working hard. There's just a lot of things he's trying to get his arms around right now.
What groups of U.S. citizens are being hurt by the various sanctions, and how can we frame the message to secure their Republican vote?
You know what's interesting? When you talk privately with people who've come here right, there's this big narrative that, the immigration issue is it's so hard to immigrate here. So hard. We had, with the exception of 2008, when President Obama was elected, now he wasn't president yet, so in 2008 there were 1 million people that became naturalized that year. The highest year since then was last year. 757,000 people in America under President Donald J. Trump, the guy who hates immigrants. It's crazy. You can't make this stuff up. So when you talk to people who have done it the right way, people here in our community that are from South Texas, from the Valley. I went to the Rio Grande Valley, RGV. It's the worst place on the entire border. There's hardly any walls. The walls that are there are a mile inland because of the Rio Grande, the way it meanders. They can't build it right on the water because it will flood everywhere. And so when you talk to people who have done it the right way, they will tell you privately, we've got to fix this. It is damning our legal immigration way of life. We got in line, we did it the right way. We came here to live the American dream and to be a citizen of the United States, not create a segmented who can't speak English. And this is not just Hispanics, it's Chinese, it's whoever else can come across the southern border, because believe it or not, there's all kinds of nationalities. One of the fastest growing areas is people from Cuba coming through the southern border. Cuba. Now people through the Middle East. The cartels are advertising, taking their drone shots of people screaming across the border, using that in commercials. We saw the commercials. Using that in commercials to advertise in the Middle East. Get to the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, and we can get you to America, and you can be in America. We don't care anything about where you know what your background is. You could be a terrorist, whatever you want to be. We can get you to America. And so the biggest people we need to go after are the people who have done it right, that we're here to protect them. I think that's why you continue to see this growing percentage of Hispanics that are supporting Donald Trump, is because they know that he is doing it the right way. He's trying to make sure you're coming here the right way.
You brought up Baltimore a few minutes ago. Fox News reported that Representative Cummings' district in Baltimore received $15 billion in federal money in the last 2 years. Is that a normal amount? If all 535 congressional districts received $7.5 billion per year, that would come to over $4 trillion per year.
We haven't gotten a check yet. I'm just saying. I don't know. Ron, did you get the check? I didn't know. So I just saw that today. I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of details behind that, because as I was leaving, going to one of our other meetings today, I saw a lady ask that question of Congressman Cummings, where is the money? What did you do with it? And so, what's interesting, you may know this, that Nancy Pelosi's, I think it was her brother and her son, brother and uncle were both mayors of Baltimore. So anyway, they left and escaped to San Francisco, which I'm sure it's a lot better out there. Because I've seen some pictures of Nancy's place, and I guess there's some alleyways where there's a lot of trash scattered out there too. So maybe she brought that with her. I don't know. But it's I don't know what they're talking about. There must have been some urban renewal monies that were given that they never used. So I'm sure that will be a very hot topic in the next few days to come.
Didn't they receive some of the bailout money too?
It was under the TARP money? I don't know. I have to find out what that is. Like I said, I just heard it as I was leaving, so I went to get some more information on that. What's that?
Someone wants to know, does Congress plan to repeal the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act that protects vaccine makers from lawsuits related to injuries and deaths caused by vaccines?
There's been zero conversation about it, zero whatsoever. Nothing, again, you all see the conversation we're having. These are things that matter to Americans. There's been tons of conversation in our state about it, obviously, but there's been zero conversation about this in Washington, D.C. Zero, which is really sad. These are things that matter to a lot of Americans, and the only hope in all this, when I'm said and done, is that we can get back in the majority, and that hopefully what we've learned in this short period of time is that we need to get back to doing the right things for Americans and not playing games.
Is that something that could be handled with an executive order? I'm just asking.
I don't know. The problem with that, as you know, right now would only be good until next assuming the president wins, it'd be good for 5 years. We'd like to get some permanent fix, because you would think that the only people that would probably be against this would be the pharmaceutical companies, and their argument's going to be, well, if you do that, then we don't have any way of limiting. We won't put drugs out there, or we'll take stuff back, or we won't develop more stuff. We'll quit developing vaccines that save lives.
We're okay with that.
Yeah. But I mean, and you guys know a lot about this. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time over the last 2 years dealing with this issue at the state capitol, which is great. I mean, we need examples, best bets to use whenever this comes to the floor, if it ever does.
Would you support bringing articles of impeachment against Representative Jerry Nadler? And I would like to add Adam Schiff to that list.
I mean, if I knew that they said this under oath, absolutely. Here's, the president referred to, I don't know what he's called Jerry Nadler. I don't know what his title is, but Adam Schiff was pencil neck, right? But if you remember about a year and a half ago, Adam Schiff said, I have evidence that will impeach the president. And so when the day came that they didn't have the evidence, we're all asking him, hey, Adam, where's that evidence at? He went quiet. I guess he must have given it to Jerry. Jerry has it now. And Jerry said he had that, last week before the Mueller hearings. He said, I've got it. This is going to be some big news come out. There was nothing. It was crickets. They're just all bloviating. I mean, they ought to be removed. They're such an embarrassment in their positions. They ought to be removed by Nancy Pelosi. But again, remember, she's in charge of all those. She appoints those committee chairs. They need to be gone. They're saying stuff that's nonsense. You got Schiff on Intel, and you got Nadler on the judiciary. It's terrible. Terrible. So it's just, I give you examples of other leadership they have that, they don't even know the proper order of, the parliamentarian procedures. It's parliamentary procedures. It's just a joke. It really is. It's just it's a circus. It's a circus. It's a great theme. I mean, I wish I'd thought of that, but brilliant marketer.
What do you hear about the usefulness of the trade sanctions against China that have been put into place by President Trump?
Yeah, so this is a huge topic. I've met with Peter Navarro. I can give you a lot around this. The president is a deal maker. And the president, like many of you all are in business, nobody likes to deal over the phone, via Skype or FaceTime. He believes if he can get you to the table, that he will come out with a deal. But I got to get you to the table. Well, what he found early on is when he talked to Europe about, I'm going to put tariffs on your cars. In fact, I remember back in November when we were talking, he was with about 30 of us. He said, I have found that tariffs alone are not enough. You have to put tariffs on cars. Because cars contain so many materials that are from so many industries that it's devastating to that particular country. And so he learned that early on that you can get people to the table, like he did with Trudeau, who hates him in Canada, got him to the table to talk about USMCA, which is another thing I hope somebody asks about that we should get voted on. So he's threatened those with Mexico. If you don't do your part, Mexico sent 21,000 people to the border, 15, then 6 more. And then he did it with Guatemala. If you just remember last week, guess who came to the table? Guatemala. Actually, what the funny thing was on Mexico, it happened on a Sunday, he said it. It was a Sunday that right before the Tuesday that Vice President Pence came here. We were flying back with the Vice President, and he said, we got message tomorrow on Wednesday. The President was in Europe, I think, or in China. He said, the next day I'm meeting, all the Mexican government's trade people are flying up here. We're meeting tomorrow, Wednesday. Wednesday night they cut the deal. So this happened on Sunday. He made this statement. Wednesday the deal's cut. Sunday, this next Saturday or Monday, it's basically signed. The president signed when he got back, and they're shipping soldiers to the southern border, keeping people from even starting the desert walk. And now we're reaping the benefits of that. And you should give a big applaud to the president, because what we're seeing right now is a 20% drop in June and a 22% drop in July in people walking across the desert. So.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. What efforts are being made to remove Medicare restrictions that prevent nurse practitioners and physician assistants from signing off on home health orders for patients receiving their assistance? For instance, NPs and PAs cannot sign orders for diabetic patients who need orders for diabetic shoes. The patient must instead be seen by another doctor.
Okay, you got me on this one. So But here's what I'll tell you, though. This is a classic example. So somebody want to raise their hand who put that question out here so I can kind of look at you? Okay.
She's a nurse practitioner. She has patients that she sees and they have diabetic issues, and she cannot sign the orders.
So what Lori was saying there is that she's a nurse practitioner friend that can't, has diabetes, can't sign, you have to wait for a doctor to sign off on the prescription, whatever's needed. So let me just give you an example. We talk about Medicare for all. So we did a hearing in budget, and we had Mr. Vaught, who was the acting director of OMB. So this is the president's budget office. And we had him in there. And we had Keith Hall there as well, who was, that time was, I think he was the acting director of OMB. And we were asking him about this whole issue of Medicare for all, what it was going to do, lower reimbursement rates, but more importantly, the reimbursement rates for doctors was going to drop so low that it would discourage people from being doctors anymore. And your nurses would be elevated, so they would be your primary care folks anymore. So they're going to, but there was no conversation. They hadn't even thought about that. Rural hospitals, the Democrats say they want rural hospitals to survive, yet the OMB director and the CBO director both have said in this policy under Medicare for All that rural hospitals will have to close. They'll have to close. And so now you're having to drive even farther to come into your specialist. And your primary touch point when you're sort of your roving docs anymore will be your nurse practitioners. And they'll have to have the ability. So these things that I was telling somebody earlier, they have all these conversations about free education for all, free health care for all immigrant children for the rest of their life because it's a bad thing that happened to them. There's a bad thing that happened to a lot of people in this room, but you're not expecting the government to take care of you the rest of your life either. So, as we go through this, we're going to have to, there's no undergirding to any of their policies. They have the talking point, but no thought underneath what's going to go on. So we've got to, it'll be addressed sooner rather than later if Medicare for all, which it won't, but we've got to get after this. I'll check into this, so we're making notes back here. We'll get into that, see what's up.
What are the 4 things that need to be done immediately to address the security of our southern border?
Well, having been there, I will tell you that we need more wall where it's practical. And I will tell you, I mentioned earlier that the wall doesn't sit on the border in the Rio Grande Valley. There is some wall there, and what's interesting about the wall that's off of the Rio Grande is that people, when they come across the river, instead of escaping out into the wilderness, the shrubs, and taking off because there's no roads along the river there, they're not like there is when you watch the TV shows, you'll see there's trucks driving right along the wall. You can't do that in Texas because there's all this shrubbery that goes right to the river. So if you think about it, they're driving down to the river, and then they have to go back out over a mile back down to the river. So anywhere in there, somebody can escape into and just be timing. I've seen overheads with drones where people time this. They'll send somebody through where they know that the Border Patrol have cameras to detract them, and they'll have a truck come down the other side and pick them up and haul them off. So we need technology, more walls, the president's building. We need better surveillance, more surveillance at the point of entry crossings. I tell you, when you go to somewhere like I went to, the Hidalgo point of entry, it's unbelievable. RFID devices, they come through and they actually come through and they hold it up and it's scanned. And it's amazing what pops up on those screens. They know every port of entry they've come into, but it needs to be more robust. Went about 10 miles over to the Parr port of entry where there were 4,000 semi-trucks lined up coming in, 5 lanes wide, X-raying. When I was there, they were bringing liquid methamphetamines in coconuts. They were actually cracking them open with a sawzall. It's craziest. They need better techniques. This was dangerous. They had 2 guys sitting in white suits. There were 32,000 coconuts in this truck. 16,000 of them they had the eye poked out of them, a balloon put in there, liquid meth put in there, and a little daub of putty back on them. 16,000 coconuts stacked up there with liquid meth. They had about 3,000 cut open. I've got, I think, a picture of it, 25 5-gallon buckets full, about that big, with liquid meth. These guys are in gas masks, and they're sitting, it's 107 degrees. They're sitting on a dock. One guy's holding the coconut and turning it as the guy sits there with a Sawzall. That's how they crack them open, and they pull it apart. Scary, really scary. Those guys need protection to deal with this. It's incredible.
The United Nations supports gun control, illegal immigration, and Muslim Sharia law. Will you fight to reduce the USA's support of the UN?
Absolutely. You know, the president, they've lost their way. They hate Israel. They hate our stance on Iran, although they have no answer for Iran. The list goes on and on. You talked about Sharia law, you talk about, you know, guns, but you see what's happening in some of the European countries. They're allowing guns to come back in because they're tired of the high murder rates, because, believe it or not, the people who don't have guns are the ones getting killed, not the ones with guns. And so the UN needs a lot of restructuring. It is really messed up, and I know the president's talked about it, and we gotta keep working hard.
Okay. We're going to move into our rapid fire, you know, that doesn't
Yes,
mean,
no, maybe.
Well, kind of. First one I have is promises made, promises kept. Of all the promises kept, which do you feel has done the most to help Americans?
Wow. My promise to go after the food stamp issue, just because it's so personal to me. I think Ronald Reagan said the best social program in the world is a job. I want to keep doing what I'm doing to promote job creation, put Americans to work, get after the immigration issue, and help people get off of that. I mean, still thinking today, the greatest economy in the world. When President Obama took office in 2008, there were 17 million people on food stamps. Today, there are 36 million people on food stamps. 36 million, and the president's taken 4 million off. So we got to keep working hard. So anything to do with that, then I would say second, but a close second, is my work with veterans, taking care of the military men and women.
I don't mean to be difficult, but I can read this one, so so I'm going to try this. If it's not something you want to answer, I'll understand.
All right.
What is your reason for co-sponsoring the opioid database legislation?
So what that was about is that if you have a doc and you had Lori, I won't pick on anybody, but Lori goes in and she's got a medical issue, but she also over here has an opioid issue that could be detrimental to what that doctor prescribes. There was no way for that doctor to know anything about that. The doctor is your caregiver. They should know everything about you if they're responsible for taking care of you and giving you the best medical care they can. They should know about your being. And that's been separated. And that needs to be brought together where the person's whole record goes with them. A doctor has a Hippocratic oath, obviously, to treat you regardless of where you came from or what you're about. And I think they need to see the whole picture.
Doesn't that help limit the doctor shopping?
I'm not sure about that, but you know, I think, again, if you're going to your doctor and you have, because most people are ashamed of that or they want to keep it separate, I think now that needs to be merged together so that you have the ability for your doctor to know. And that was really the whole premise behind that.
What ideas do you have about how Congress could reach across the aisle to work on the more or less neutral area of infrastructure?
Oh, well, there's, you know, right now first of all, as you all know, Pelosi and Schumer went over there and talked to the president and they said, we want $1 trillion. He said, let's make it 2. Let's make it 5 because we don't have any way to pay for anything, right? Right now, the only funding mechanism we have is fuel tax. That's it. And it's declining. So to raise that is a diminishing return. It doesn't solve the problem. We've got to get back that we're spending the T&I money, the Highway Trust Fund money, on Highway Trust Fund stuff, not on bike paths and beautifications of parks and, you know, rail stations to nowhere, and creating these special deals to get other funding. They used to call them Tiger Grants. They call them something else now. But we've got to get back to funding truly roads and bridges. I mean, we've got roughly a $4.6 trillion problem right now to bring entire America back up to I think it's a B level on our infrastructure, $4.6 trillion. And that includes only 40% of rural America has broadband. 40%, which is huge in Oklahoma. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, population of rural citizens in the United States. When it comes to, I think it was about 30% of our population lives in what's defined as rural. I've spent a lot of time on this. You know, Mark Wayne just introduced a bill about rural broadband, but it's so expensive to introduce that last mile because you're only going maybe to one customer. And it's not very robust. It doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. So if you got, I heard a testimony from a gentleman for the Republicans, is a disabled veteran. He said, I can't start a business. I want to do a business to, I think it was sell motorcycle parts or something. That's how he got hurt. And he said, I want to start a business in my rural community, but I live 10 miles from the closest broadband. And he said, so I'm sitting out here drawing, I want to help support myself, but I have to sell my property to do that and go to some city place. So it's one of these things that, America's wired. That's part of the infrastructure problems. How do we get broadband to some of these areas? And 5G would be a huge part of that as well.
Not a fan of 5G, but...
well, that's because Huawei's doing it. We need to get our folks, yeah.
This was prefaced with a statement to you.
Okay.
It says first...
Is this a love statement?
It is. It's written in red. It's written in red. First, we greatly appreciate the fantastic job you are doing.
You're welcome. But...
Despite, not a but, despite the obstructionist, socialist, self-serving swamp creatures you contend with every day, you are in our prayers regularly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, the question. Is there any feasible way the Democratic-held House is going to accomplish anything of importance before the 2020 election, or are they just going to try and run out the clock?
Oh, I said this 2 months ago, and I know this is not prophetic, but maybe it was for a freshman. Everything that's going on right now is about the 2020 election. I mean, here's the thing, it's the most incredible deal. You got the House of Representatives basically ran by a 29-year-old. Now, I'm going to tell you something about, first of all, I will tell you in my office, somebody made a mistake in my office about 7 months ago. They came in my office, they were actually one of our team in DC, and said, AOC. I said, I'm going to stop you right now. I never want to hear those three initials ever again in my office. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and if that's too long for you, say the Socialist Democrat. I'll get who that is. But I said, the crazy thing is that a 29-year-old who was a bartender is now running the House of Representatives, and Nancy Pelosi is allowing it to happen. How many times have they had these spats, as they call them? And now Cortez has got AOC plus 3 with Presley, Tlaib, and Omar. And now, tonight, we're going to hear, if you watch, a Democrat debate of Democrat presidential candidates that about a month ago, when asked about single-payer system, getting rid of your personal health insurance, they were all asked to raise their hand. They all raised their hand. They were all asked about giving free health care to illegal immigrants. They all raised their hand. They're all so into this social Democrat position as being our next president on the Democrat ticket that we have lost our way. It is really scary. And I'm not trying to scare you. This is one thing, it is real. And we've got to be really concerned about this. We've got to be engaged. One of the things that really concerns me is that we're really engaged with the president, but we're not really engaged across the country. And it's scary for me personally. I know you all are engaged, but we got to get more people engaged in this district. What's happening is people are so turned off right now by politics that they're not getting engaged at all. And the people that are turned off the most are Republicans because they're so turned off by the Socialist Democrat where this country is going. The Democrats are engaged because they hate the president so bad. Hate always will win over. And so the Democrats are engaged like crazy. I don't talk about this in this setting, but it's like Kendra over here. She's raising a ton of money from Act Blue all over the country. That's the Democrats' wing of fundraising where they go in, basically they all pool their money. She's going to raise a ton of money over there. She's going to be hard to beat. You all have counterparts over there. She needs to be beaten. I don't care who the Republican member is, that she's got to be beaten. And I've said this, and I've been challenged and said, well, you shouldn't be after your colleague and you're part of your delegation. But the reality is that we've got to take back the House, or we're not going to change this direction. It's just not going to happen. You know, people want me to, to retract what I just said, but I will tell you, she was over here talking to her Democrat counterparts in Tulsa, and they said, we get the right candidate, we can win the 1st district. She said that before I said what I said at the state convention and what I just said right now. So they understand that they got to win in these urban areas, and I will tell you the polling, I know we love our president, but we saw some polling. Some of you may have seen it at the Republican Club. The reality is that in our rural areas, 2, 3, and 4, that the president has got about a 70% popularity in the general election. 70%. And the 2 urban areas, CD5, Oklahoma City, is at 53%. Tulsa is 52%. These aren't our numbers. We ran a poll. We were right there. We were about 54, but this was from Pat McFerrin. Ran this across the state. So we've got. Don't be complacent. Don't be complacent. Energize. I know Bob Jack's working on this. I know David's trying to unify the party across the state to really work on our urban areas. But we've got. And Kendra's a great. She's a great Democrat candidate. I mean, she's doing a great job for the Democrats. She said she wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi. It was one of her big campaign promises. Her first vote was to vote for Nancy Pelosi. First vote. And so we got to work. We got to work hard and keep working hard.
I'm not making this up. There's a card here that you just answered the question. It says, can you actually reason with a socialist Democrat? And I guess your answer was, if Nancy Pelosi can't do it, there's no reason you should be able to.
No.
But so I'll ask this question.
Let me just tell you something interesting about this. There's still opportunities to be bipartisan, though. You all have friends. I mean, not all your friends are Republicans. Maybe they are, but you probably have some Democrat friends you've spent your entire life to try to convert. There are some incoming freshmen that came into the House. We actually, when we did our little mission down to the southern border back in June, maybe it's May, I can't remember, it was just hot, I remember that. 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats were invited. Only 1 Democrat went. He's a business person from Minnesota, a freshman, named Dean Phillips. Has been very successful, family's very successful. We went down there, we saw. He looked at me, we keep talking to each other, he goes, we cannot let this continue. We have got to go back and say, quit, politicizing our southern border. We got to secure our southern border. He was talking Republican. He went back. He's part of what's called the Problem Solvers Caucus. They are instrumental. If it had not been for the Problem Solvers Caucus, we would have not got the $4.6 billion. Now, there are Republicans on it also, but it's led by Democrats. The Democrats, when they told Nancy Pelosi that we're not going to support you in blocking the president, that's when it crumbled and it passed. She was mad, really mad. This Dean Phillips just took 18 members down to the border to take more of his Democrat members and more Republican members down last week to see the border. So I will tell you, Michael, there is hope that they're not all socialist Democrats, but we've got these issues that matter to the security of America should not be partisan. They should not be partisan. They should be bipartisan solutions. We've got enough other social issues to talk about, but the security of our nation should not be, this partisan bickering we're doing. And it has been for years. It didn't just start. So we got to fix it.
Well, that wasn't really my question, but
okay.
You did an excellent job.
Well, you got me going on that, though. You got me going.
I have heard on the news there is GOP and Democrat support for a carbon tax. It's not, the person who wrote this card said, I have heard.
Yeah.
Okay, not me.
Yeah. You haven't heard that? So if you go look, how many of you all know who Grover Norquist is? Americans for Tax Reform, ATR. So if you go look at his website, I think it's probably been about 7 weeks ago. I actually went over and spoke to his group. He does a Wednesday group every Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's the most conservative people in America. They run all the different groups, the ACUs and all these different groups. And I spoke. He asked me to come over and speak because I introduced legislation to eliminate the carbon tax, eliminate the ability for the federal government to spend money on developing a carbon tax. And he made a big deal. He pushed it out to tens of thousands of people across the country. It was a big deal. It made up it hit all the energy news outlets. And when you talk to the people that are actually in that industry, we had the president of Exxon in our office. We have this thing called the House Energy Action Team, and I'm the messenger for that. Somehow they think because I was a McDonald's guy that I know how to market, but it's been pretty interesting. And so I asked the CEO of Exxon, I said, tell me about the carbon tax, because they have Exxon has carbon tax, they're pushing to other countries because of the way the structure in those countries are. And they said, the devil is always in the detail, because what the narrative is that they'll do some carbon tax and then turn around and give a dividend back to the communities. And they said, you know, these areas where you have these high coal areas will get nothing. We'll get nothing. So they're not for it in the U.S. It's not going to work in our structure. We got to keep pushing back. It's another way to go after the energy industry, to destroy the fossil fuel industry, and we can't let it happen. And that's why I was so adamant about it.
This may not be one of the more pressing issues right now, but with all the transgender and gender identity issues going on in the country, is Title IX basically dead that was set up to protect the female athletes in this country?
Again, that's a great question, Donnie, but it goes back to what I said a minute ago. They have all these talking points. They have no undergirding to any of their, I mean, they can't answer the question when a person, a male, self-identifies as a female and wins a track meet, and they said, well, it just happens. I mean, that doesn't just happen. God made us to be man or woman. He wasn't confused. He's never been confused. And this confusion nonsense is nonsense. And so we've got, again, you ask them these questions, they have no answers. They throw these talking points out there. The latest talking point right now is that everybody's a racist that questions any of this stuff. If you question it, you're a racist. You're a racist. So when the president calls somebody back a racist, that didn't go over so well for the media. They went crazy. Are we done?
You're done.
Oh man, is there anything else I can do? I mean, is there anything else? Hey, hang on a second. I just want to say this. I mean, I know that, you know, we got a lot of stuff working here. I know we have a lot of different groups here. There's an old African saying. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We've got to make sure we lock horns on this. I will tell you, if anything, what's going on the left side of the House is it is bringing people close together on the Republican side. Bringing people close together. Many of you know that I said on the campaign trail that I would vote for Jim Jordan for Speaker, and I did. And Jim came over to me and he said, and he and Mark Meadows came over and said, I appreciate that. We weren't real good to you, you know, in the primary, but we appreciate that. We appreciate you putting all that aside, and it's about moving the country forward. And, you know, when you look at the first person, when McCarthy won this in January, the first person that came and congratulated him was Jim Jordan. And so Jim Jordan runs the government oversight committee, done a fantastic job. If you want somebody, in fact, you guys can just ask him yourself, because a week from Saturday, he's going to be in town for me. He's coming in. Yeah. So I want you to ask him, let him tell you the story. I mean, this man knows this, like this chronological order, almost date stamped, about how this happened with Fusion GPS. Who didn't know anything about, let's say, Fusion GPS? Anyway, he knows this date stamp, what happened, the players, everything about it. This is a great conversation. It's the frustrating part. I was talking to Rod back a minute ago. For some reason, we can't prosecute the known facts. But when Jim comes in here next week, we're going to have him, we'll have the agenda out, we'll get it out to all the leadership here so you have it. But he's coming in, he's actually going to be on Pat Campbell in the morning at 6:45, talking about the event. He's coming in, but he's doing it, going around the nation, you know, helping folks like us, making sure we don't have a primary opponent. And what that's really about is allows us to go down the road here to CD5 and help whoever comes out of that primary. I'm not going to get involved in the primary over there, but I will get involved in the general, assuming we're not, you know, got our own things to deal with here. But we've got to work together to make sure we take back this House so we can get the agenda back on the right track in America. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.